Another reason why Head Start is so appealing to Black Mississippians during this time is that by the 1960s, mechanization of agriculture has finally come to the state, right? So as cotton choppers are being fired and replaced with machines, there are many people who need jobs. And Head Start, as I told you, was a community garden, right? It was to provide early childhood education for kids, but it was also to provide employment and leadership opportunities for adults. So many adults said this would be a great way for me to get another job. And not just a job, but a well-paying job outside the local white power structure, because Head Start is a federal program. So if they indeed got a Head Start job, they saw themselves as federal employees. I should say that while in mass meetings like this across Mississippi, but especially in the Delta, Black Mississippians are enthusiastically saying we want to apply for a grant, there was still one stumbling block that had to be overcome. And that was figuring out a way to avoid the governor's veto. Because when the Community Action Program, as part of the Economic Opportunity Act, was before Congress, Sergeant Shriver did not have the votes he needed to get the act passed. And he decided to compromise with Southern congressmen by putting in something called a governor's veto. And the governor's veto said that governors could veto any community action program they did not like if the program was sponsored by a private organization. The only loophole in that is that if it was a community action program sponsored by an educational institution, then it would not be subject to the governor's veto. So even though you've got thousands of Black Mississippians who are interested in applying for a Head Start grant, they're very hesitant to even think if this is going to be possible because they know that the governor of Mississippi at the time, who was Paul Johnson, would definitely veto any application coming from their communities. And to give you a sense of who Paul Johnson was, his claim to fame was in 1962 when he was lieutenant governor. He had physically blocked James Meredith from being ushered into Ole Miss by federal marshals, right? So that was his claim to fame. That's what he ran on when he ran for governor. And it was clear that he was no friend of civil rights activists. So the question was, what could CDGM do to be able to get their program exempt from a governor's review? Now, if we think about Mississippi, especially in the civil rights era, the logical choice, right, for an educational institution to sponsor an all-Black Head Start program would have been the Black and private Tougaloo College. Tougaloo had a long history of civil rights work. It was Tougaloo students who in 1961 desegregated the Jackson Public Library, and it had been at Tougaloo that many people like Dory and Joyce Ladner had really launched their civil rights careers. So it appeared that Tougaloo would be the perfect choice to serve as a sponsor for this Head Start program so that the program could not be vetoed by Governor Paul Johnson. But there was a problem, and the problem was that Tougaloo had already experienced a lot of, how would I put it? They'd already experienced a lot of oversight from the Mississippi legislature, even being a private institution. And the legislature had essentially told Tougaloo's president that if they did not clamp down on activism on that campus, the state would take away the college's charter, right? So the school would not be able to exist if they didn't have a charter from the state. And so when CDGM supporters approached Tougaloo about serving as the sponsor for their Head Start grant, Tougaloo says, we can't do it. This program, there's too many of you all in this program that are connected to civil rights. This will get us in trouble with the Mississippi legislature. So after Tougaloo says no, it appears that there are no more options, because there were 3 public HBCUs in the state of Mississippi, but all of these schools depended on the legislature for their funding, right? So none of these institutions wanted anything to do with this Head Start program. So at the last second, a CDGM supporter says, what about Mary Holmes Junior College? And for those of you who don't know, Mary Holmes was a co-educational Black college founded in 1892 by a Presbyterian missionary, Reverend Meade Holmes, and his daughter Mary. And this school was funded by the Presbyterian Board of Missions for Freedmen. So CDGM supporters approached Mary Holmes Junior College about sponsoring their Head Start program. And they did because, if you recall, the Presbyterian Church had publicly stated that segregation was incompatible with Christianity in 1964, right? And that was a stance that many mainline Protestant religious denominations had not taken. So the idea was, well, maybe if the national church has said this local institution that's affiliated with the Presbyterian Church will have mercy on us and decide to partner with us. And even given the national church's stance, the Marion Homes officials were very hesitant to get involved because they did not want to bring any type of unwanted oversight from state officials onto their campus. But after much back and forth and a lot of negotiations about the types of administrative fees the college would receive for supporting this program, its administrators got on board and they decided that they would sponsor this program. So now, if CDGM received a grant from OEO, they would be exempt from a governor's veto because they would be affiliated with an institution of higher education. And indeed, with Marion Homes' support, OEO awarded CDGM a grant for $1.5 million to run an 8-week summer program during the 1965 summer. And I should add here that it was a Delta ministry minister who was influential in changing the minds of Marion Homes administrators. It was a minister by the name of Bob Beach, who was actually based out of Hattiesburg. And he was a Presbyterian minister, but he worked with the Delta ministry to convince the staff and administrators at Marion Homes Junior College that this was a worthwhile endeavor.